I just wrapped up my first convention, and yes, you hear me say all the time, this is a channel where we cover all things 3D printing for your tabletop games. But what's at the heart of this channel isn't the tech, it's the games. The games are the reason, we 3D print the stuff. The reaction on our players' faces is the reason we make the stuff. That drive to do something creative and pick up a new hobby or several hobbies in my case are all the things that motivate us beyond the simple tech of 3D printing. So my first convention wasn't a maker's fair or a tech convention. It was a tabletop gaming convention, and I'm really happy it was.
You may not come back. Take it home.
You may not go to the rest of the convention.
This weekend I was at MACE in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a wonderful experience for me, and part of what made this such a special experience is that some of my favorite creators who got me into making and using terrain when I first started playing D&D were also at MACE. Many of us hadn't met in person before, but for me, it still felt like a reunion of sorts, and felt so good to spend some time gaming together and also getting to directly connect with others in our community. Even though some of these crafters don't do 3D printing on their own channels, these are fellow makers and they are leaders in our community. They were all also a really big part of why I started my own YouTube channel earlier this year. So I couldn't pass up the opportunity of us being all together, and I asked them each 10 questions that are geared towards folks who are interested in crafting and or DMing, and where those two hobbies intersect. Here is what they said.
It used to be games would inspire projects. Lately, it's sort of the opposite. See something that I want to do or want to build, find something on Google image search I want to replicate, and then backfit a scenario or some reason to use it. Yeah.
I would say it's probably 50-50. Half of the time what I make is because I've read ahead in the adventure I'm running, and I'm like, oh, that would make a great centerpiece. But then sometimes I see something in a video game or on TV or one of your crafts, and I think, oh, that gives me an idea, and I make something, and then yeah, I'll intentionally try to find a way to squeeze it into a game.
I would say that my games inspire my projects, mostly because I do pre-written modules. I don't usually write my own, but I always go off track. I always change it up. I never just use the modules written ever. Sometimes it's reverse. Like I think, oh, this terrain would be cool, in this kind of setting, and so I may add other elements that the module or the mission or the game didn't necessarily think of, and I thought of. And usually it's the night before the game. And then I think of those extra elements. I'm like, oh, I gotta make this,
It's sort of a mixture of both, because I am working with my husband whenever we do the campaign that we play at home. So oftentimes it's gonna be something where he has an idea because he's doing a homebrew, and he'll ask if it's something I could create for him. He won't tell me what it's for, but he'll say he needs this particular type of terrain or this particular type of object for the table, and I'll create it. Or sometimes I just come up with an idea of something I want to make, and once he sees it, then he'll shape it to fit the game.
Tiles, and for me, it's I call them my frost grave tiles. They are 4x4 inch foam pieces that are just nothing but stairs. So everything I designed for those is designed so that really two pieces can flip and match together for quick storage. Hands down, my favorite and most used piece or bits of terrain.
A bunch of the recent Gothic buildings, I've used those more than anything else, even more than the dungeon tiles.
My trees. Every single situation, the trees are usually on the table, which is funny because those are one of those, secondhand. It's just secondhand stuff because it's, it goes back to when I used to be a florist and making things for the florist shop. So for me, it was like, oh, that's like a quick 5-minute project, and they're there almost every single time.
Basically, my tilescapes tiles or mats, actually.
Yeah.
I made some mats when I first started Tilescapes, or actually when I first started the 2.5D Next.
Yeah.
I made some mats, and I use those the most of anything that I've made.
Wow.
So basically it's just a cork mat that I've
Yeah.
stamped on
Yeah.
with a pattern. And the area is big enough that it's an interesting enough space.
Exactly.
And if I put a couple, 2 or 3 of them together, I can make an even bigger space.
Yeah.
Those have been super versatile. I use them in almost every game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not really, because I've always been a writer and I've always been a reader whole life. So that's the type of thing where, you know, creating the 2 homebrews I'm doing now for when I go out to D&D in a castle, that's pretty much shaped more by the novels I used to read as a kid and the stories I used to love to tell my own children. So that influences more my ways of how I'm going to DM than the crafting itself. The crafting is going to be part of it, but it's not the influence.
Oh yeah. Now, before I started doing the crafting stuff, I was a 2D DM. Somewhere in that 2 years, I discovered DM Scotty. I think that's everybody's excuse. Scotty. So yeah, I went from a 2D to a 3D, and I haven't really gone back. Occasionally, I'll do Theater of the Mind or a 2D game when it's just doesn't warrant a 3-dimensional aspect. But yeah.
It can, you know what I'm saying, it can influence. And that can be a problem actually, because if you make something, if you spend a month making something really cool,
You feel obligated to use it.
right, and the players circumvent it by some clever means or whatever, you're like, oh, you tempted to want to railroad them into doing it. And, you know, I don't do that. I'm very conscious of that, and I don't do that. That's why I try to make modular stuff.
Sure.
So it's much easier to go off track,
Yeah.
you know, and not force the players, oh, I made this thing that took me a month to make.
No, I don't think so. If I run Theater of the Mind, my table has the same cadence. I try and keep the same pace and everything. There's a little bit extra delay if you're switching set pieces, like I was earlier tonight.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, I think it's pretty much identical. For the players, the experience is certainly different.
Cool.
Yeah.
One big thing has been 3D printing, which you know a lot about,
Yeah.
right? The 3D printing is fantastic. I use bits,
Yeah.
you know, 3D printed bits. I tend not to make whole terrains with it because it's long to print and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And I want to keep my own style.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Generally my own style with the way my world looks. And I think it's unique when you craft something.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
unique. So that's something that it has over 3D printing. I'm not knocking 3D printing.
No.
You know, but that's the way I like to do it. But I love the 3D printer is such a great tool
Yeah.
for adding bits. Like I printed like clear bits, you know, and then put lights in them and that kind of thing. So really, yeah, it's an amazing tool.
Now that we're getting more and more homebrews coming to the front with Drive-Thru RPG, and we have the DM's Guild and everything like that, we're not just stuck in the fantasy, not stuck, but we're not just in fantasy land anymore. We're getting Westerns, we're getting modern, we're getting post-apocalyptic, we're getting, you know, Italy type of stuff. So I think that is what's going to trigger a shift in the classic dungeon terrain to other things being created to fit the new concepts coming through.
If I knew you, it would be my next episode. You know, you never know. At some point, we will reach a saturation. There will be, I think, no more fundamental new ideas to have. It'll be iterations on them, or people joining who are like far more talented than me and can use the same mechanical ideas, but the finish of the product just looks professional and amazing. I think we'll continue to see stuff go in that direction.
Where I think the evolution is going to be is I think somewhere in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to start seeing game stores possibly integrating the digital displays, TVs, where the DM can come, plug in their laptop or their iPad or whatever, and the terrain will now be back to a 2D format.
You can't be afraid to start simple and know that you're going to throw away your first 1 to 10 projects. You'll see something way recent in my backlog and maybe want to try and build it. and you could become frustrated. So don't do that. I started with, I found DM Scotty. I built his 2.5D tiles with corrugated, almost no walls, and I've thrown them all out. They're very quick to make. They're very gratifying. Even if you're not good, the result still looks pretty darn good, and people are happy with it at the table.
Yeah.
I've had things I pour my heart and soul into, and no, it doesn't get meaningful views. And then I've had throwaway ideas that people latch onto, and it gets huge response. So it's not the complexity of the thing or even the quality of the finish. I don't know what it is, but start simple and don't fret.
Mistakes are okay. Mistakes are actually the best thing that can happen to you, because you're going to learn from those mistakes what doesn't work. And sometimes those mistakes will give you an idea for a different way of doing things. So don't be intimidated by seeing what other people are putting up in the groups and sharing, because they've made mistakes too. They've had those hiccups in their crafts. They've had, the hot glue gun completely melt the foam unexpectedly. So don't be afraid to get into it, and don't be afraid that it's not going to be perfect from the get-go, because it won't be, but the more you do it, the more it'll come closer to what you want as you work with it.
Tell your spouse if you're married. Don't ignore your family. This is a hobby that you can quickly, it's a rabbit hole. You can go down it so far, so fast, so quickly that you forget you have another life.
Watch some of the main crafters or any crafters, and you're gonna wanna a lot of crafters will see somebody's style and it clicks for them.
Yeah.
That's why I like having the other crafters
Yeah.
doing stuff, because it's not just me. I would look at those guys like Black Magic Craft, Wyloch, DMG, Vanessa, the Crafting Muse, and of course the DM's Craft, the channel called the DM's Craft. And it's kind of a test drive. See what you like. If you don't watch all the videos, watch a few, and then say, oh, this is really what I want to do. This is it. And then maybe of course you continue with that person.
No. I hate to say it, but no. But again, because I've always been crafting, yeah.
When I started playing around with the glue gun, that's when it hit.
Yeah.
Like, this is an amazing tool that you can do so much with.
Yeah.
We started doing magic effects, fire, you can put texture on objects.
Yeah.
Making, I was doing caverns with 2.5D, putting texture on the walls and on the tiles themselves. And it's so easy.
Yeah.
It's like anybody can do this.
Yeah.
A little bit of practice with this, and anybody can do it. It's not hard to do, and it's super cheap. And the glue is great. That was an epiphany for me with the glue. Yeah.
It's addictive. It's addictive. I've always gone down in the basement to my workshop to tinker, but now I go down in my basement every day. I'm always down there doing something. I usually have 3 or 4 projects going at once.
I didn't know how much you truly can tolerate a hot glue gun burn. They're not that bad. And hot glue guns are not that hot. People talk very dramatically about them, but it's fine. The next day, it's healed up.
But I guess my biggest thing would be make the videos.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy not to make a video.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Of course I do.
It's a lot of work.
Are you kidding me?
It's a lot of work. I don't think people realize how much work, and it's like, and us crafters put especially a lot of work in, because you have to film the process, edit it all together. If you're gonna do it, make sure you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some technical inputs, I guess, because if you want to make videos, I assume it's because you have content to put out. So that much is on you. So if you want to get started making videos, I use Blender. I like it. It's totally free. It's for 3D modeling, but people don't know. It's got but it's got video editing capability.
Yeah.
Very powerful. And there's excellent free tutorials. In 90 minutes of watching tutorials, I was up and running, and I've never looked back. So it's easy to become proficient. I started with my phone camera. You could get a camcorder or even a DSLR. If you think you're going to be serious about it, then I recommend skipping it. Just buy a $400 entry-level DSLR, and then you just got to find your own style.
Don't worry about the quality of your videos, early videos. Just put something out there. Jump in the pool. You're not going to drown. This is not a physical pool. All you're going to do is you're going to look back a year later and go, wow, I've made a lot of improvements to how I shoot things, how I narrate things. Establish your name think hard about the title of your channel if you want to do a YouTube channel, because I just recently rebranded.
Figure out your voice. Absolutely. It's one thing to say, I want to be like fill in the blank, which everyone wants to do, but it's best to make sure that you are true to yourself and true to how you want to present things, and don't feel like you have to fit into a certain shape or mold or expectations of what is okay to craft, what will be accepted to craft. I mean, if you have an idea that seems off the wall and a little bizarre, still craft it, because it's going to connect with someone completely unexpectedly.
Definitely a hot glue gun.
As I would expect you to say, you know.
And I love Elmer's glue all, so you know that.
Yeah.
I like the one I'm using now, the Sure Bonder,
Yeah.
because it has 2 settings. It also shuts off automatically, so if you forget to turn it off,
Yeah.
that is a great feature,
Super
and
handy.
I've done that before. You know, if you're really on a budget, you could stick to cardboard and cardstock and that kind of thing. You don't really have to, you know, it's really how much you want to spend.
Yeah.
And that's what I always try to say, that basically anybody can do this because it's not that expensive.
Yeah.
But really the basic tools are dirt cheap, and you probably have them in your house already.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit of paint and patience is really all you need you can make something.
Yeah.
So I don't want anybody to be intimidated by any kind of price point. Yeah.
If all you have is $200, I would suggest you spend that on as a wide a variety of tools as you can. Look at the videos that we put out, see what we're using, paintbrushes, knives, T-squares, that kind of stuff. The 3D printer can come later, because if you drop all your money on the 3D printer, you could create some great stuff, but you're not gonna be able to enhance it.
Good cutting mat. Lights. You want to make sure you have good lighting, especially if you're going to be painting, because that's something where your eye strain can definitely catch up with you. So if you're going to do that, get some good daylight bulbs. Sturdy table. The paints. Honestly, the paints though, you don't have to start with the big expensive stuff right off the bat. That's, you know, get your Apple Barrel, get your Craft Smart, and all those sort of things as you're getting into it. You have the Proxen materials, which are great, but again, that might be something you want to wait on a little bit just to make sure you like crafting. But you know, the basics really are your Mod Podge, your glue, your hot glue gun, your mat, your cutting utensils, and things like that.
Like the basic starter kit stuff, you need a utility knife. I like the box cutters that have the breakaway tips, and they as you use them up.
Yeah.
A good like $10, $15 one from Lowe's, the kind you get refillables for.
Yeah.
A metal ruler, 16 inches. Paints, you know, any craft paints from Michael's or craft store. I like Americana, but all of them are fine. Hot glue gun, the small size. There's 2 sizes of hot glue gun. You want the small one so that you can do detail work if you want. Yeah, and other than that, stock of raw materials, chipboard, foam board.
The best one to start with, probably one of the ones that deal more with scatter and not full throttle terrain. I think scatter is a good way to get into learning how to craft and do things, because it's smaller bits and pieces. The Stonehenge circle, actually, it's like 5 videos back from this interview day. That one is probably an easier one to attack because it's smaller bits and you can make a few of the pieces and still get the effect without having to do a full-fledged circle if you just want to see how it goes.
I love my 2.5D and the Next, but I've kind of moved on to the Tilescapes, and I have a playlist for the Tilescapes.
Sure.
And I would watch that.
I'll put a link in the bottom.
Yeah,
too.
I would watch the Tilescape playlist, because that's basically how I play now.
Yeah.
I use the Tilescapes.
Oh, for a newbie. Okay, because my quintessential, like, what I consider my thesis statement would be episode 95. That's a modern take on, because my initial videos are horrible. They're almost unwatchable. They're terrible. So 95 has a modern recap of how to make dungeon tiles, my way. But for a newbie, I don't know, it's hard to say. It depends what you're trying to make. Recently I did sci-fi scatter, like it's Industrial Wreckage, I think is the title of the video. That's pretty easy. It shows you how to collect junk and stuff from kids' meals, shows you how to flock with sand, how to get a flat base, how to do all of it without power tools or MDF.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a good one if you're just scatter terrain. Anyone can do scatter terrain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think every crafter needs to start cutting foam, and making tiles. It's your first, you'll learn how fast your blades dull. You'll learn how to make cracks and how to paint. You'll learn that spray paint will ruin foam. Make them your your design, your paint scheme, and then just see where your imagination takes you from there.
Airbrush.
An airbrush?
Yes, I love my airbrush. Proxen's a close second, but the airbrush has enabled me to paint miniatures in a way that I wouldn't normally be able to, and do environmental gradients that you could achieve with a brush if you're a pro and you can wet blend and all that, which I can't. So the airbrush I love my airbrush.
It used to be the Proxon, and don't get me wrong, I still think my Proxon is my favorite go-to tool for accurate cutting of foam. But right now, it's my 3D printer, because anything I cannot do with cardboard, foam, putty, whatever, and I'm not good at sculpting, but anything that I can't do there, I can 3D print.
A sharp utility knife. No, honestly, it's having those good basic tools, because those are the ones you're going to rely on the most, and those are the ones you want to make sure they're working properly. So a good glue gun, the good utility knife, the good cutting mat. They're more expensive, but you're using those pretty much every single project.
There's some people in the community that love to use the Proxon, and honestly, I don't really use the Proxon that much. I do like to do foam stuff, but I tend to use the Hotwire Foam Factory hand tool.
Yeah.
Proxon has a tool, which is nice, but the Hotwire Foam Factory tool is lighter and easier to use.
Sure.
It's more fluid, I think. Those kind of basic Hotwire Foam Factory tools are a great step up from where, just hot glue and
Exactly.
the basic crafting materials.
If you're interested in seeing more of this kind of content, please let me know in the comments below. When I go to cons in the future, I want to make sure I'm covering stuff that's both entertaining and valuable to you. Thank you again for watching. Happy printing and happy gaming.